Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues now. And make sure to stay tuned to catch me, Mike Gallagher, coming up at 9, only on AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So, a lot of reaction from Democrats and their handmaids in the D.C. press corps about Trump's rhetoric in the direction of Kim Jong-un and his despotic co-conspirators in North Korea. Trump yesterday suggesting maybe he didn't go far enough.
And frankly, the people that were questioning that statement, was it too tough? Maybe it wasn't tough enough. They've been doing this to our country for a long time, for many years. And it's about time that somebody stuck up for the people of this country and for the people of other countries. So, if anything, maybe that statement wasn't tough enough.
And he's not letting down. I mean, tweeting out this morning that we're locked and loaded if North Korea pulls the trigger.
Democrats are also concerned about security and the security interests of the American people.
Are you sure?
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Kathleen Rice, she's a congresswoman from New York. She tweeted last night. Trump's not the only one using Twitter. I'm just going to say it. The NRA and Dana Lash, they're one of their spokespeople, are quickly becoming domestic security threats under President Trump. We can't ignore that. So President Trump and Republicans are focused on North Korea, the intelligence agencies, North Korea, Department of Defense, Mattis, North Korea. The Democrats, as exemplified by the good Representative Rice, focused on the NRA as a threat to our freedoms
and sweet
and
Dana
existence.
Lash. I mean, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, so there you go. Just to give you a little sense of why the Democrats are the super minority party in this country. For more on the serious side of this discussion, that would be the North Korea side, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Michael Rubin, resident scholar for the American Enterprise Institute. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Hello, Amy.
So should we be stockpiling foodstuffs and building fallout shelters?
No, I don't think so yet. That said, look, when you kick the can down the road for decades, eventually the road comes to an end. And that's where we are right now. And what's really, really silly, Dan, is when people are complaining more about Trump's rhetoric than recognizing that the real problem here is a communist regime which has lied and cheated through decades of diplomacy.
And then North Korea responding by saying that President Trump is a senile man.
Well, I mean, it's always amusing to look at what North Korea is saying, and on the internet they even have North Korea denunciation generators and North Korean rhetoric generators. It's become so cliché. It's the East Asian equivalent of Baghdad Bob, if you remember that from the Iraq War days.
Well, and to the rhetoric, David Ignatius had a piece on this about the U.S. not being able to go it alone against North Korea in either war or peace. And he's a little bit of two minds on Trump's rhetoric. He talks about Trump's inflammatory rhetoric potentially being destabilizing. At the same time, he says Trump's hope for a diplomatic solution depends on convincing North Korea and China that he's ready for the, quote, fire and fury of nuclear war should negotiations fail. So is his rhetoric out of bounds, or is it tactically intelligent?
Well, it's a little bit of both. You know, Trump during the campaign said that he was going to keep both his allies and his adversaries guessing. He wasn't going to be predictable. And you know what? China, for the first time, is taking this very, very seriously because they don't know what the United States is going to do. During previous crises, whether the president in the White House was Democrat or Republican, the Chinese kind of figured it was all bluster. It was just the typical boilerplate condemnation language that we see at the United Nations, but nothing was going to come out of it. Now people in Beijing are wondering, you know, maybe things are going to come out of it. And when people condemn Donald Trump for, basically being a buffoon and a simpleton when it comes to diplomacy, keep in mind that we got a UN Security Council resolution, including China and Russia signing on, with the greatest sanctions leveled against North Korea in recent memory.
Hey, not to mention, how'd the Rhodes Scholar Bill Clinton do in terms of derailing North Korea's nuclear program? That framework that he had back in '93 doesn't seem to have worked out.
Well, no, it absolutely did not work out. And if people remember, even afterwards, Madeleine Albright, the Secretary of State, went to Pyongyang to meet with the North Korean leader, and he embarrassed her by by having a big presentation where there's a mock missile launch in one of these stadiums, and she just laughed and laughed it off. And the fact of the matter is, sometimes with these dictators, you need to take them at their word. People forget when they say we need more diplomacy. And I was reading something the other day from the Quakers, actually, which said that when diplomacy is ongoing, North Korea doesn't launch missiles, and that's just outright incorrect. During previous episodes of engagement of diplomacy, North Korea launched missiles as the negotiators were talking, deeply embarrassing the negotiators and showing their insincerity.
Now, President Trump yesterday was keeping the information, close to the vest about, what response we are going to have, because next week, right around the corner, where Kim Jong-un is going to fire a shot near Guam. What do you think our response is going to be? How far are we going to take this?
Come anywhere near Guam, we're going to try to shoot them down, Amy.
Okay.
And we're not going to take risks with that. In the past, North Korea has also shot missiles over Japan. This becomes very, very dangerous. And so I wouldn't be surprised in this whole escalation if we see Japan bolstering its missile program, its defense program, perhaps even revisiting its constitution. This is also what's getting China deeply, deeply nervous, because the last thing they want is a militarized Japan. Now, the big secret in the region is absolutely no one wants North Korea to collapse, despite Defense Secretary Mattis's talk about regime change, because the ramifications of a North Korean collapse on the whole region would be far greater. This isn't like East Germany and West Germany. This is far, far greater.
In Foreign Policy, a piece by Jeffrey Lewis, an arms control nuclear expert, suggests that the game is over. North Korea's already won. They're already a nuclear power. He's ostensibly been following the development of their nuclear program for decades, and he suggests that Kim Jong-un has more nuclear weapons than we thought, and that from the very start of their nuclear program, they decided to build miniaturized bombs to fit on top of long-range missiles using compact plutonium bombs rather than highly enriched uranium. And essentially, the horse is out of the barn, and we're not going to be able to put him back in. If that's true, number one, if you agree with that assessment, that threat assessment, number two, if that is true, then what exactly does victory look like with respect to North Korea?
Well, one of the ironies here is Jeffrey Lewis from Arms Control Now was a big proponent of the diplomacy all along. So to turn around and say, hey, they already got it, it's a fait accompli, it's a little bit analytically dishonest there. Okay. That said, the biggest fear has less been North Korea launching its nukes at someone. The reason why we haven't taken action sooner is because Seoul, the capital of South Korea, this metropolis, it's like Chicago, with skyscrapers about the same size, is within range of North Korean artillery, and so everyone's afraid of North Korea lobbing artillery shells at skyscrapers and so forth, and it would be 9/11 times 100. Now, that said, the problem with North Korea is people believe they could actually use this. The indoctrination has been so great that when we see the types of other cruelty and bizarre behavior that comes out of the regime, it's not something we can sit back and just say, hey, deterrence is going to work. Because also what a lot of people forget, Dan and Amy, is when people say, hey, during the Cold War we had deterrence with the Soviet Union, is just how many times we came pretty darn close to nuclear exchanges, and that was when both sides were actually rational.
Who supplied the nuclear weapons to North Korea?
Well, North Korea did it on their own. If we go back, I think it was to 1984, that's when we first became concerned, or 1988, I'm sorry, that they were trying to develop plutonium, and then we've had this crisis be bantered about ever since. So this goes back to the Reagan administration, the Bush administration, the Clinton administration. Bill Clinton was actually considering military action, and then Jimmy Carter on his own went in 1994, struck a deal, and announced it on CNN, surprising even the White House. So, in a way, this is also part of Jimmy Carter's legacy.
Vali Nasser over at Johns Hopkins suggests that if you want a blueprint for the best outcome here, all you have to do is look at the Obama administration's Iran deal.
Well, no, and I think he's got that just backwards, because we have the same negotiators who negotiated the Iran deal that actually negotiated the 1994 agreed framework.
Yeah. North
Korea cheated on it all along, and so when you look at North Korea today, you're looking in the crystal ball at the future of Iran, and don't forget, there have been Iranian scientists at almost every North Korean missile launch, North Korean scientists in Iran's nuclear program. These two are interrelated, and so Vali Nasser, I think, is just trying to sort of save his own legacy in advocating for the Iran deal, but ultimately both have been disastrous.
He is Michael Rubin, resident scholar for the American Enterprise Institute, author of a number of books, including Dancing with the Devil and Kurdistan Rising. Michael Rubin, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Amy.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.